Hello, welcome to William Steele True Crime channel and podcast. Well, as you guys know from following Inmate to Roommate and my books about crime victim advocacy and standing up to pedophiles and serial killers, we have an interesting show for you tonight that's going to be just a live, more like a news report. We don't have a lot of information yet. We have a lot of background. And it's a case of Cameron Rocha. Cameron Rocha is from a very prominent dairy and cattle family in Newman, California. Newman, California being outside of Fresno, California, and he is also a former educator and was some kind of professor at Fresno State, and the family of educators and ranchers and dairy farmers. And this is a very, very troubling case because he has been, seems like, dodging justice since 2007. A warrant on a very serious case. We have somebody here with inside information that's going to be very helpful in putting these pieces together. But evidently, he is charged and allegedly has committed a crime of drugging somebody and then raping that individual. Now, the facts are still coming together. Don't have a lot of detail at the moment, but we've known about this case for a very long time now, and nothing's been done about it. It seems like there was a lot of problem with getting law enforcement motivated to do anything about it. There's massive wealth in the family. There is a small town, prominent family, and nobody wants to believe, that this is allegedly going on. There's also allegations and suspicion that this may implicate a pedophile ring, but we don't know. We're not saying it is concrete fact, but it's not looking good. So this is alleged, this is suspected, but we want to bring the fact out that he somehow self-surrendered, never had to report to the jail evidently, and posted a $50,000 bond, and then was assigned some kind of conflict or alternate counsel, as it's called in California. It seems like most people that get that are saying they have a conflict with the public defender's office, but they're indigent. And there's evidence to support that this guy is not so indigent. But be that as it may, maybe just a temporary stand-in lawyer for the time being. Cameron had his first appearance / arraignment the other day. And as we listened in, and several other media outlets and organizations that cover true crime and, these types of crimes, conveniently, the WebEx in the Fresno County Court went out. The cameras weren't at the right angle. The audio wasn't correct. You couldn't hear anything. So we were in touch with the court and the court administrators. They assured that this would never happen again. But it's very convenient that this has happened and this person's been able to elude this case for so many years. Anyway, we don't know if he's guilty or innocent. We have reached out to him to give him an opportunity to respond, his friends, his girlfriend, his mother, his father, just to see if they were willing to, in interest of fairness to Cameron Rocha, give him an opportunity for his side to be heard. Perhaps his lawyer's telling him not to speak to anybody. I don't know. But we did reach out. There's several messages left. So we have a very special guest today that has a personal connection to this individual and to this family, and it's very unfortunate because I know it's really affected her life, and I've had to, in my role as crime victim advocate, this is my fiance, and my fiance is indirectly related to Cameron Rocha, unfortunately. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Mary Bass. Mary is a forensic accountant. She's a civilian fraud examiner. She is an expert in nonprofits. She is a member of the ACFE in good standing. And she's long time been a crime victim advocate, which is how we met. You guys know I wrote 2 books, one about Robert Durst, one about Ghislaine Maxwell, from the point of view of advocating for the victims and how I believe God brought me through these dangerous situations with these people who I knew many years ago. Mary read one of my books while I was incarcerated, and she said upon reading it, she fell in love, and we reached out, started communicating. One of my best friends was the vice president of NBC television, and she reached out to him, Tom Madden, for public relations representation from Transmedia Group, which is a huge public relations firm in South Florida and Boca, to represent Dave Reinhardt. He's incarcerated in a California prison. He's innocent. He's sitting there. And so Tom said, hey, one of my best friends / client, William Steele, is incarcerated. He writes books, and he's a big crime victim advocate. And he works with people that are wrongfully incarcerated and also works with victims of crimes and tries to solve these various crimes. So Tom introduced us, and we fell in love, and we're engaged. And so she has a personal connection, and it's been heartbreaking hearing the story of her stepfather's suspected murder, Larry Revis. And I will let Mary tell the rest of the story, and I'll be here to support her as she tries to get through this. So, Mary, I'd like to introduce you to my audience. You can say your piece. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to your audience for watching this. As Bill said, my name is Mary Bass, and my connection to this particular defendant, Cameron Rocha, is that his mother, Wendy Revis Rocha, is legally my stepsister, unfortunately. I'd just like to point out this case is out of Fresno County, California. The case number is F199000634. It was filed on January 30th of 2019. We had in the chat, they wanted to know the date of the alleged crime. That was March 16th of 2017. The charge is 1 count of rape by use of drugs, which is a felony charge. And Cameron was arraigned last week on this case. And strangely, although we observed the court proceedings very closely, the audio feed from Department 20 of the Fresno County Superior Court was not working. The video feed was not working. The camera was misplaced. And if he did appear personally, seemingly no one saw it. So that's quite irregular. Then again, I'm not entirely surprised that Cameron, as a criminal defendant, would get treated differently than people of lesser means. The Rocha family is a very wealthy family, and unfortunately, based on my personal experience with them and their own admission, not everything they do is so law-abiding, unfortunately.
Right. And I will say, I've heard Mary talk about this for the last several years, and there was other matters going on in court where it seems like the probate courts were being manipulated and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of loss. It's just unfortunate that what's going on here, and a lot's going to be coming out more. There's going to be additional litigation, most likely. But so just real quick, Mary, I'd like to just welcome some of our viewers. We have Dr. Scholl, Clear Dr. Scholl. He's a doctor who was entrapped and sent to prison despite being innocent. And so he's a dear friend. I want to say hello to Laura Leone. Hi, Bill, she says. Thank you for joining. And what does that say? Callie Dime? I can't hardly read it. It's Callie Dime. Thank you for joining. And Ray J, you're Atwood's guy, Sean Atwood. We love Sean Atwood. I was on his show twice. And thank you so much for joining. I'm biting at his coattails over here. So we're going to get a regular show going here about 5 days a week. But so Mary's going to continue with this story. Thank you, everybody, that's joining us so far. We're also going to be editing this up. So I don't know that it'll stay on after this, or we're going to edit up, put some images and after the fact and get it up later tonight again. But also in the description, there'll be some legal court documents and additional information where you can find about this particular case of Cameron Rocha. Cameron, if you're watching, you have more than an opportunity to join the chat. Family members. I'm new to this whole situation, but I have seen enough of the evidence to know that this is a very, very big situation that's unfolding in Newman, California right now, and everybody's trying to suppress it out there.
To answer Ray's question, Cameron has been a professor of agriculture at Modesto Community College. I'm not entirely clear on his capacity as far as what he did professionally at Fresno State University in California. Seemingly it's going to be related to agriculture, dairy, agribusiness, those topics. Yes, Cameron is a third-generation educator. His father, Richard Rocha, teaches third-grade children with special needs. His grandmother, Elaine Rocha, who's Richard's mother, is also a retired educator. His uncle, Randy Rocha, is a teacher at Horace Dimble High School, as is Randy's wife, Kathy Costa Rocha, also a teacher. In California, it's my understanding that that would make them all mandatory reporters.
Right. And we make no specific allegations about crimes that may or may not be committed by these people. We are just putting it out there because we have a family member here who's trying to describe the connections and the concerns the community should have, because we are also trying to have more victims come forward, if any exist, not only of Cameron's allegedly or suspected victims, or anybody else connected to Cameron or this Newman situation. Again, we're not making any accusations against anybody who's not charged. We're not even accusing Cameron. We hope this didn't occur. We hope he's innocent. But the victims need to be listened to. And I was incarcerated for nonviolent crimes, but I was with a lot of guys that did things like this. And I tell you what, they don't fare very well in prison. And they do horrible things to people that these victims have to live with all their lives. Nightmares, alcoholism, drug abuse, abusive relationships. There's all kinds of ways they withdraw or they hurt themselves based upon what other people have done to them. So we hope there's no truth to these allegations and charges against Cameron, but we are giving him an opportunity to be heard. And Mary?
Well, the town of Newman has approximately 12,000 residents. Quite small. Richard Rocha has been a teacher for over 30 years. In my opinion, my interaction in years past with Richard and Wendy Rocha has been disturbing and unfortunate. It's my opinion that they are very unkind people who, at the very least, enjoy intimidating and frightening others.
Right. I've personally seen some evidence of that when I spoke to both of them about doing an interview several months ago, and was met with seemingly high arrogance and entitlement and just belligerence, directly saying things to me that I knew were lies at the time. So you have to consider who you're dealing with. And again, we're not accusing them of any other more serious crimes. But so we're trying to follow this Cameron Rocha case. This will be a series of lives and detailed reporting on this case and this individual.
Without accusing anyone of anything illegal, I will say that in years past, Richard Rocha made it very clear to me personally, by his own words, that if, hypothetically of course, either he or anyone he was related to were to do anything untoward, that they would not be held accountable by law enforcement because he is a distant cousin of murder victim Lacey Rocha Peterson. Probably a lot of your viewers are familiar with the Lacey Peterson case and Scott Peterson. Well, prior to her being married to Scott Peterson, her maiden name was Rocha. So Richard, who in my opinion is very arrogant, entitled, that's how he ran it down to me, that because of that loose inference that they are never going to be held accountable for anything they may or may not do that could be, at the very least, questionable. That seems like a bit of a stretch to me, but perhaps it's worked for them for a long time. I can say that they are very wealthy, so it would not surprise me if, let's say in this case, Cameron, by virtue of his family's wealth, was able to buy off potential victims to keep them quiet, or if need be, pay for a very costly defense on this matter.
Right. In cases like this is common. We're not accusing Cameron of doing this, of course, but appearances are, something else. And sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. Now, keep in mind that everybody in Lacey Peterson's family deserves sympathy, respect, prayers. She was murdered. Scott Peterson is doing, I think, a life sentence for her murder. He, in fact, was transferred, I think, last week to Sacramento, back to the county jail from prison to get another hearing about his release. And we're not going to touch much on that right now, but we have a ton of information and witnesses on that. There's actually some information coming out that he may actually be innocent. Either way, I don't have an opinion on that just yet. We want to keep the focus on what's going on here with Cameron Rocha and the case as it plays out in the Fresno County Court. And again, he's from another nearby county, but this charge is out of Fresno County. And he's from Stanislaus County, which is Modesto, Newman. I'm pretty sure it's adjoining to Fresno County. So this is what's going on. I thank you guys for joining us. Mary, would you like to say something else here? Are you in contact with the victims and their families? At this time, no. If they want to reach out, they're more than, we would appreciate that. But again, we're not going to put their names out there or their addresses or anything. We're going to respect them. They're allegedly crime victims, and we treat them as such, especially in a sexual abuse allegation. But they're more than welcome. Anybody related to Cameron that wants to contact us, you can do so anonymously. We set up some information that'll be in the description and a phone number that anybody can provide any tips. If you want them relayed to law enforcement, we'll help you through that process, or we'll put law enforcement in touch with you. But if you have somebody who's allegedly drugging somebody or getting them drunk and taking advantage of them, we've all heard the horror stories, and my heart breaks for those victims. We all have female members of our families, and even males can be victims of this. But it's one of the lowest things that somebody can do. And so we hope that Cameron's not guilty of this.
I would like to say that whomever the victim is in this specific case, I'd like to commend them on their bravery of even contacting law enforcement concerning this. I'm personally very well aware of the heavy hand of the Rochas and just how frightening and intimidating and controlling they can be, in large measure due to their wealth and their historical connections in Central California, including Fresno, California, where both Cameron's parents, Richard and Wendy, are from. So I would just like to put it out there to the victim, if he or she happens to see this, you have our support. And if you would like, you're welcome to contact us.
All right. Mary, do you have anything else to add to this?
I put the email in the chat. So it's anon@williamsteeleauthor.com.
In the chat is an email that people can contact with additional information. Cameron as well. Family members. Again, we're not making any allegations against any family members, but we would love for them to tell their side of the story on this. And there's a lot of things in this family that really do need to be put to bed. And, I do believe that people should, come together rather than be at each other, in a negative way. So we're trying to handle this as tactfully as possible because there's personal involvement, and that's my disclaimer on that. But it's an important enough case because I've seen what happened with Robert Durst. He was able to suppress, the fact that he told me and many other people, that he killed his first wife, Kathy Durst, and I'm still in touch with her family members. And because of various prosecutors not moving on this, he was allowed to get away with his wealth and tangling up the system with lawyers for over 40 years before he was convicted of murdering Susan Berman. So wealth and prominence and affluence says a lot. And these cases shouldn't keep flying under the radar just because the wealthy get a different level of justice than, somebody who's a person of color or a person of lesser means. And, I've seen it happen time and time again. Yeah, I was a law clerk in prison. I've seen many people that have actual proof of their innocence, but they couldn't produce it at the time or whatever, or the lawyer didn't bother getting it. And unfortunately, they're in prison. And because they don't have a life or death sentence, they usually can't engage the services of like the Innocence Projects. They work on the most seriously sentenced prisoners. So they're stuck, with guys like me who don't really know a lot, but I try to point them in the right direction. I'm not a lawyer. So I've seen cases like this where the super rich are out on the street for years or never face justice, and everybody else is rotting in prison somewhere, Anyway, I just want to raise awareness. Mary?
Well, thank you all for watching this, and I hope that we can keep an eye on this case going forward. The next court date is in early December. And I put the information here if anyone has tips, leads, questions, concerns, anything. If
Right.
Cameron Rocha wants to give a public statement, we welcome that, of course, so that he can be heard on this. And thank you again for those of you that have watched this. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. William Steele, True Crime. Please continue watching Inmate to Roommate on A&E Network. It's streaming now, and I can't tell you what's coming next because I'm not allowed. But it's looking good. It ended up being one of the top reality shows in the country. So I'm really humbled by that. And I thank you for my audience. This is a work in progress, and I am getting it together. We have so many fascinating guests lined up. But please follow this case. We support and love the victims. And anything we can do for you, we'll definitely do it. Thank you for joining us. Good night.